and we're good to go. Welcome everybody to the Talking Games podcast. I'm your host Taye, and today on the panel we have a couple of members who are not available right now, but they will show up shortly. But Tony has come to the rescue, and he will be taking the place of Kenwell / Ushers. Tony, how are you? And tell us, please, what games are you playing?
I'm good, my dear co-host. So right now I'm playing.
Calm down, okay.
Well, look, I'm consistent. Okay, that's an upgrade. I'm getting an upgrade here. I'm consistent on this. Well, yeah. So I'm playing Clair Obscur as of since yesterday, less than 24 hours.
So basically, you're like everybody else who's jumping on this.
Oh yeah. Game of the year. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, it's good so far. It's very good. I was meant to get Oblivion, but then after reading the reviews and obviously all the hype about it, I was like, well, you know what? It's on Game Pass. I was going to buy Oblivion because I was not going to play that on Game Pass because I don't want to rush, and I'm a PC player that doesn't really use Game Pass that much, except for games like this where I want to finish it and that's that. So it just made sense, $11, boom.
Okay, fair enough. When you say $11, you mean you bought it on Game Pass, just the PC Game Pass version, correct?
Oh, Game Pass Ultimate, £11.
Game Pass Ultimate, £11. This is via CD Keys.
Yeah, CD Keys, people. You know what it is. Shout out.
And we're going to talk about Game Pass a little bit, but and we're going to get into Clair Obscur. I know obviously Oblivion and some other talking points, but there is one that I wanted to get your thoughts on along with the other guys when they show up. Starfield's future. We know Starfield is probably going to likely come out to PlayStation 5 this year. It hasn't been announced, but it's rumored. Xbox has been putting their games on different platforms. We've seen Pentiment go there, we've seen Hi-Fi Rush go there, and we've seen Forza go there as well. Indiana Jones 2 as well. In relation to Starfield, though, what do you think Bethesda can do to make PlayStation fans more interested than they already were in the game? So what kind of updates do you expect? And what kind of updates do you think is going to bring Xbox players and PC players back to the video game?
Nothing. Just give the modders more keys. They'll do the rest. Boom. Skyrim was the same. Once people started seeing all these crazy mods, Skyrim, Witcher and Skyrim, Thomas the Train Engine, and all this kind of stuff. Everyone's like, oh my god, that looks cool. Bethesda's done its job. They've created a framework, and everyone knows how it is with Bethesda. The mods end up surviving the game, if that's how I'll put it. Mm-hmm. So that's it. Just give modders more keys. I know there's restrictions right now on things they can do.
Apart from modders, what would you like Bethesda to do to improve the game? Like, forget about modders, like Bethesda themselves.
There's a lot.
Well, give me your top 3.
Okay, let's see. Seamless travel. Boundaryless travel. In the sense of like when you're on a planet and stuff like that. Obviously, it might be a bit tough to go from planets from ground level to orbit without any issues, and then go through solar systems. So let's say once you've loaded into a planet, make it seamless, right? Kind of like how Skyrim was. Okay. Skyrim was only like with a loading frame when you're entering a cave or fast traveling. Otherwise, it was just borderless. So try and replicate a bit of that. That's one. 2, here, just as I've said this before the game even came out. Why on earth can you not have a companion ship? So, you've got your companions in your own ship. You go into space, you pillage whatever you want to do, steal another ship. They drive that ship back home for you. But all of a sudden, they're still in your ship. Like that ship just teleports or drives its way back to wherever it's going to be stored. I'm like, well, why can't you just have one companion, or say 2, right? Because you're stuck at having how many follow you at a time? 1?
Just 1, yes.
Okay, so one is stuck with you, and then you have 3 or 4 others you can recruit. So what are they doing? They're just back in base, chilling, eating some cheesesteaks or something. Like, have them one additional ship follow you. AI doesn't have to be smart and great at fighting, but it can be a welcome distraction. Think about it. 3 ships are after you. You have to navigate 3 ships shooting you. Imagine you had your companion with you. He might distract one of them, and then you might be able to now go behind that ship or whatever it is. It creates more complexity.
Okay.
So that's 2. What else? You said 3, right?
No, it's okay. I think that 2 is okay. Because obviously we don't have confirmation that Starfield will be coming on PlayStation, but it's more likely going to come. And whatever Bethesda chooses to do to bring back the,
I can tell you this much: it's more likely than
game.
more likely than Elder Scrolls 6. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. But listen, let's move on to some other topics. Hey, John Wolf, how you doing? Thanks, man. Appreciate you. We're talking Starfield today a little bit. We're talking. John Wolf says Starfield is 1,000% coming to PlayStation. Yes, 100%, 1,000%. The question that I was posing was, what can Bethesda do to bring?
Wait, sorry, is that confirmed?
It's not confirmed, but it's pretty much a thing. John Wolf is one of the insiders, but let's just put it that way. He knows what he's talking about. He knows.
So he's a snitch.
I mean, if you want to call it that,
okay, sorry.
But the question was basically, what does Bethesda need to do to make sure the people who are interested in Starfield, they're already going to purchase it on PlayStation, right? But what can they do to, widen that net to grab people who were a bit more cautious a little bit at the start, or people who weren't too interested, but they thought the game was good but not good enough?
Well, actually, you know what?
Imposed.
I think one thing that's very important, if you want to, if you want to really gather quite a following, right? Price tag. Because right now, Starfield, obviously you can still buy it, but Gamepass has been made it very, very attractive as well to a lot of new players. So if it's going onto PlayStation, what's the price tag going to be?
The price is going to be, $70, like charge them full price for the game.
100%. Are you sure that's wise?
Yes. Why would you charge it cheaper?
Okay, $70. Let's just run a scenario. $70. Let's say they were releasing it this year. Look how many games are coming out this year. Do you think people would want to buy Starfield at 70?
Rachie says it's kind of hard because the narrative of Clay Obscure is really good, but AAA studios have failed writing the script. And what Rachie is referring to was a question I posed, which is in the poll: does Clay Obscure shame AAA developers? Because this is a double-ish, low-end AAA game, and they can do a lot. They've done a lot, and they've managed to garner a lot of sales and potentially players with Game Pass. So if they can do this with a small budget and a focused team with 30 people, why is it that developers with 300 people are failing to actually achieve the same success? But that's
Let me answer this.
That's not the question now. So Richie, we will get to that question a little bit later. But for now, Richie also says it would be funny if Redfall releases on PlayStation in October and actually sees over 1 million. If Redfall was delayed and it came out with the patches with Xbox, the last updated patches, and they released PlayStation, Switch 2, and Xbox and PC, I would not be surprised if it reached over 1 million players. Like, I think it's possible, because remember, it's a co-op game, right? And co-op games are getting really popular, especially when you have games like Split Fiction coming out. People are playing these games together, and now they're looking for something else. I was playing, me and Tony were playing Sniper, and then from Sniper we went to Gears of War, right? So the more co-op games you get, the more people are going to play. So yeah, good point by Rachie. Ushers, welcome to the chat.
Yo, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm good. Tony, you remember Ushers? Ushers remember Tony, and
yeah, of course.
The audacious Ushers. How you doing?
I'm good. And you, Tony?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Been a while.
we were talking about
It has been a minute.
we were talking about Starfield there, so we'll get your thoughts on Starfield before we move on to the next question, which is Starfield is likely to come on PlayStation this year. What does Bethesda need to do to get a wider net of players who are already interested in Starfield on PlayStation? How can they bring more players in, even from the Xbox and PC side? So basically, what updates are going to attract people?
On PlayStation, if I'm just looking at like the reception for Indiana Jones, they don't really need to do anything. Just put the game on PlayStation and it'll have more players, because I just think there's so much anticipation for that game. Even all the hate, inverted commas, that Starfield got, it's because of the fact that originally it was intended to be a PlayStation exclusive before Microsoft bought the studio. So that game is gonna sell like hotcakes. They don't need to do anything. Just release the game as is now. You're gonna get it. I don't think it'll do better than, because of how well like it was marketed. Like it was probably one of Xbox's biggest marketing campaigns this entire generation. In fact, it had better marketing than even Halo. So I don't think it's gonna hit the initial numbers that Starfield did on Xbox, PC, and console.
Oh, how about this? Do you think it will sell more? Not players, but obviously we don't have the numbers.
Yeah. No, without a shadow of a doubt, it will outsell the Xbox version within a matter of months at the most. But it's gonna outsell the Xbox version hands down. Maybe not sell as much as, say, like for instance how it did on PC and Steam, but it's definitely gonna outsell the Xbox version. There's just way more people on that platform on PlayStation 5 that are Bethesda fans. So yeah, no, I don't see it going any other way.
Also, just let me just add. So before you joined, right, I answered that question as well, but then I said price tag is also very important, and Ty was like, "No, they should release it at $70." Do you agree? They should release it at maximum price.
I don't think that's fair, considering what are they releasing Indiana Jones at? $70?
$70, yes.
Jeez, I don't think that's fair, dude. Like, to be honest, as a gamer, I think as an ecosystem that you've deprived of this game, it's almost 2 years now that Starfield's been out. My man, like, at least give it to them at like 59. Then you'll get good sales.
I would have gotten less than that. I mean,
49.
Right now, Starfield is less than that on Xbox, isn't it? To buy it on Xbox.
That's actually a good point. Let's see what it is on Xbox.
How would you charge PlayStation more?
That's my thing. I don't think it's fair, because with Indiana Jones, it's a couple of months out, so the price is probably the same across platforms. So to your point, I agree with you. Charge the same that you're charging Xbox players. Then your game is gonna take off. Don't charge $70. That's just ridiculous, man. That's just you being an asshole. Like, if you want everyone,
you hear that, Ty? Asshole.
So you see, the thing here is, I think here's what happens when Final Fantasy 16 or Rebirth comes to Xbox. Do you think they charge it at full price?
I mean, Sony's games
MSRP full price or full price as of the? Sorry,
no
MSRP full price.
No, I agree. They will charge. Like, Sony's assholes with their pricing, dude. Like,
no, but remember, this is also Square Enix now, right? And I guess my point here is we have this situation where I feel like every single time we have to make Xbox be the bitch. They have to be the nice ones.
But that's the role they've chosen, Tyre, to be honest.
You might say that, but like,
so they've decided
when they accept to be the loser, that's perfectly fine. But when people are imposing it on them, I think that's ridiculous. So I don't see a situation where Final Fantasy Rebirth finally comes on Xbox and Square and is like, yeah, $70 guys, but then Xbox has to put their games on PlayStation at like less price because the fans there are. You can't do that. This is the same entitlement that happened when Sony makes a deal with Square to keep Final Fantasy from the Xbox consoles and PC, and then when Xbox does something similar, all of a sudden it's how dare you. I think that's the way this should work.
But I mean, like, Xbox, to be honest, Ty, like, they've set the precedent in terms of like how, like, there's a saying that says you teach people how to treat you, and Xbox has taught the industry how to treat them. whether it's the media, whether it's players, whether it's competitors. They've taught them how to treat them. It's the same reason that Final Fantasy, I think the remake is probably, correct me if I'm wrong, I saw it's coming out, which again was weird to me. Like, it's coming out on the Wii U 2. Sorry, Wii U 2. I hope that's not it for Nintendo, but the Switch 2, like, it's coming out on the Switch 2, and it's probably gonna cost like $70 to $80, right? A 5-year-old game. That's what they're gonna charge the consumers, is like $80 for that game, right? Am I mistaken? And of course, this game is not even confirmed. It's probably not even gonna come out on Xbox. But my point being is that Nintendo, like, has taught the industry how to treat Nintendo, so they can do all this shit and get away with it. Microsoft has taught the industry how to treat them, which is like, well, lowest cost of barrier of entry possible. So that's how they get treated. I don't think that's unfair. I think that's just what they've taught. These are the things that they've sort of doubled down on in the industry. So it makes sense to me that if they get screwed on that, and like people expect, I don't know, like, this is their brand, dude. This is what they've
I think
for the last 5 years.
Before that, I'll say,
Can I
hold on real
chime
quick.
in?
Richie says he's only played an hour of Club Obscure via cloud gaming. We're gonna get into that as well, the cloud element of things, because I think that's gonna be a big thing going forward. John Wolf answers the question that I posed on the poll, which was AAA, should AAA developers be ashamed of the fact that Club Obscure has, come out with 30 devs and has sold 1 million right now? We don't know how many players, but it's probably high as well. And they've put together this well-designed game from a gameplay, story, artistic perspective. And you have, obviously games like Suicide Squad costing 100, 200 million, and they just flop hard. So should they be ashamed?
And they have no...
Well, hold on,
yes,
motherfucker.
Absolutely.
Hold on, motherfucker. John Wolf says, I think that this game puts the industry in check, which is different from shame. 30 devs and quality of the charts, that tells me that 200, 300 dev teams are just going through the motions with zero passion. That's an interesting talking point.
Yes.
You can finish up the point, and then we'll get to some of the other the questions.
It's the same answer I gave you.
Oh, sorry. Actually, wait. Sorry, hold on, Tony. You had a point, right?
But go ahead.
Yeah, I thought I was invisible here. What's going on?
Fire away, bro.
Right. Okay, so the last topic. Let me quickly put my point on that, and then we'll move on to John's question. So, typical Thai answer, of course, the corporate Avenger. You know who you are. Bethesda, right? Their motto is basically, I'm just going to paraphrase here, for the gamers, right? Making things affordable. The whole reason about Gamepass is like, hey, look, we recognize all of you, want to play games and have early access and the price and all this kind of stuff. So you put that in place, then you want them at the same time to then go and punish their followers on the Sony side because of this corporate decisions going on in the background. That doesn't make sense. You can't be like, hey, Xbox and PC, Game Pass, here you go, blah, blah, blah. It's all good for you. And then go to Sony and be like, well, y'all should have bought an Xbox or a PC in the first place, $70. Like, why would you punish your base, your fan base?
Your biggest base.
It doesn't make sense. Anyways, that was my take on it. So should I answer John's question now?
When you talk about punishing your base, you're talking about like charging them higher prices.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it doesn't
make
sense.
Because I think people forget that there's a business reality in these situations. Your base, when you put a game as an exclusive, so when Square Enix says, oh, this game is only on PlayStation, Final Fantasy Rebirth, they're excluding the PC base, they're excluding the Xbox base, the Nintendo Switch base, and so they already made that decision. So the question is then, why can't Xbox make that decision? Why is it that like they're the ones who
Xbox can make the decision? But here's the thing: if everyone starts doing the same thing, going an eye for an eye, then the gaming industry is fucked. Plain and simple. If everyone's like, hey, Sony's doing this and it ain't fair, we're gonna do the same thing, then who suffers? Just the gamers.
I agree, but I've got a little bit of a different slant to that. So my thing is, again, I'm gonna go back to what I said. This is Xbox brand. You've decided to be the bitch of the industry, so know your role and do your thing. Shut your mouth and play your role. Like, this is the strategy that they've chosen. They've chosen to be the low income or the low barrier of entry when it comes to buying games. So they need to honor that and ensure that they offer the same sort of, especially because of the fact that Sony will not allow Game Pass on PlayStation. So if they want their games to sell there, which they do more than they do on their own console, so they need to put up with that. That's a reality that they've created, that they've nurtured, that they need to put up with. That okay, cool. If we put our games on PlayStation, then it's either we make sure that the deal is a good deal for our PlayStation fans or PlayStation gamers. Yeah, just to be competitive. But if they feel that they need to put it at $70 to be competitive, I just don't see Microsoft doing that. Like, especially with Phil at the helm, I think they want to get those
John
guys.
John made a very good point there. Budget gaming. That's a very nice way of putting it.
Yeah, that's exactly what they've decided. Whereas Sony and Nintendo have decided to be premium gaming. So they're saying we will charge you 80 to 90 because we think our shit it's gold. So you're gonna buy it anyway. Microsoft, on the other hand, their shit is so devalued at this point in time that even brilliant games like Starfield have to sort of like fit within that same framework, because that's the framework that they've decided to market themselves as.
Mm-hmm. Well, hold on. Let's like round up this talking point real quick. Starfield's future. What do you think that they need to do to grab the audience, right? We've seen Cyberpunk do a 360 2.0. We've seen No Man's Sky do something similar as well. Do they need something like that, or do they actually need something way less?
But like you talk about like Starfield, like it's suffering. Like, am I missing something? Like Starfield is not suffering. Starfield has done incredible numbers.
Well, my question is the people who are on the fence, like so someone like Tony, for example, he liked Skyrim and he had some interest in Starfield. Upon looking at the game, the gameplay, the aesthetics, the graphics, he came to the conclusion that it didn't do enough for him.
Did he try it? Did he actually play it?
Nah, he didn't play. He just likes to.
No, he needs to try it.
Yeah, I did. I did try. What are you on about, Ty? I did try it on Game Pass.
Try it, bro. It's a brilliant game. You will not regret playing it. I don't regret playing Starfield. It just
doesn't have as much distraction as the other games released from Bethesda. So when I play these kind of games,
I agree with you. I agree. It doesn't have enough to hook you. I agree.
Exactly. The immersion is not as much as I wanted. That was the only issue I had with it.
But can I make a point?
Ushers, before you make your point, I just want to reread this comment here. It says, I wonder why Microsoft didn't purchase many small studios, then started releasing gems instead of buying Pew Pew Call of Duty for $70 billion.
Exactly. Well, because they're Microsoft, that's why. Like, it's a very easy answer in my opinion. They're Microsoft and
I think if I think my ushers have talked about this before as well. If Microsoft had purchased Activision much earlier, years earlier, or even any of these publishers like Bethesda earlier, or they used the Activision money to at least some of it to buy mid-sized developers, like the CD Projekt Red, for example, I think they would have the console race would have been slightly different. I think they would have had more sales. Probably they'll be in the 40s, maybe high 40s, and Sony might be maybe 7 million less or so.
It'll be a close race.
There's a problem with that statement.
It'll be a closer race.
There's a little bit of a problem with that statement. You're speaking about it from the point of view with hindsight of what has become of those mid-sized developers, in recent times, the games they've released and how well they've done. See, I'm assuming when Microsoft decided to do this aggressive buying stance, right? They're obviously looking at everything. Hey, do we go for Pew Pew COD, as he called it, which is guaranteed to do very well, and then later on you can lock that as an exclusive to punish your competitor. So that's a possibility, right? That's like a power play. Or do we go for the mid-size, small size ones, and then now, if our game doesn't do well, because it's not guaranteed to do well, right? Because it's mid and small size. It's like a gamble. Pay high, get a stability, go low, play the cards. Which way do you want to look at it? Do you get
no, I hear you. Sorry?
Yeah, I'm here. What's up?
No, I wanted to know, like, cause I've got I've got a counter to that. Like, my thing is that like, it's like, if you go back to all the interviews, if you are really plugged in, if you are like a fanatic of Xbox, and you are really plugged into all, and you believed in Phil Spencer, which I did like for the longest time, and his vision, a lot of his talking points were always about the fact that they've not given up on the race and they still want to gain market share, and they're just trying new ways to try and gain market share. That was the case up until they actually succeeded in actually buying Activision, and then that whole messaging changed. Then it went from, well, you know what, we want to have the best exclusives for our customers, to, well, we want to put games on everywhere and everyone is a gamer, blah 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 blah, and all this stuff that we're in now, and putting everything on every platform. So this was never a set, like, and this is the thing, and we've talked about this a lot of times, like, the reason Microsoft is been, in my opinion, so unsuccessful in gaming is the amount of times they pivot. Even when they're winning, they pivot. They cannot stick to one strategy for a year. Every year they've got a new strategy for their gaming division. Game Pass is one of those pivots, because Game Pass came about at a time when they were doing something else, and then they decided to pivot to Game Pass, and it worked. So I don't know if, like, in their frame of reference, pivoting to other ideas is how they perceive success. But it's the only way I can justify how they've done business up until this point. Because it makes no sense.
Let me challenge your point. Let me challenge your point with a statement, with a question.
Yeah.
If next year, let's just say next year, after all the games this year have released, all the heavy hitters are out, if Bethesda says, you know what, every game that we own, we're going to make it exclusive, but bringing it back to being exclusive, not to be released again on PlayStation, right? Who do you think is in a better position, Sony or Microsoft going forward?
I'll say, because I don't know what Sony's lineup is, Microsoft is in a better position, because the problem with Sony is that Sony has got actual money problems and actual revenue issues that their shareholders are actually holding them to account. So, like, everything that Microsoft has done, which is putting their best games on PlayStation, it's actually helped them, because it's taken pressure off them in terms of producing great AAA games within a short time span. So Microsoft has actually helped their competition survive. So this was the time when Microsoft was actually supposed to strangle and choke Sony to death, because they're in a compromising position. They have no games. Imagine, like I always say to people, imagine this entire slate that we're seeing now that's going everywhere, including buying games like Expedition 33 as timed exclusives on Xbox. Imagine if Xbox had used these IPs the same way Sony would use these IPs against PlayStation. How badly Sony would be doing right now, because they've got nothing. They put all their money behind fucking, what was that shit? That multiplayer game and other multiplayer games. They've got nothing right now for a long time. This was the time when Microsoft was supposed to be stomping Sony to the ground with the amount of games that they have that are only available on their platform. If not on their platform, you can get them on PC. But then for some reason, they decided to pivot again. And that's why we are where we are.
Tony, hold that thought for a second. I just want to give a shout out. Tevya Smolka, welcome back. Long time no see. He says that Starfield, he actually had a good time with Starfield. The game is fun in his opinion. And I agree. I think most people would agree that Starfield is fun. Richie says something that I think is actually really, really interesting about Starfield. He says it needs multiplayer, better companions, and an obsession to throw Sarah into space. Something about killing Sarah, right? Cool. But I would agree with that. He also says that you could easily make Starfield into a Helldivers like 2 game. And I think he's right. You can make a multiplayer where you're playing what you call it in Call of Duty again, where you stand still and the enemies like bomb rush you. Like hold this base, kind of like zombies, right?
Horde mode,
yeah. So if we could really do that, and I think that's actually, for me, that would be the answer. If you wanted to grab people who like who likes RPG games are gonna get Starfield on PlayStation, Game Pass, whatever.
Yeah, of course they are.
But to get people's attention to go beyond that kind of RPG market, I think obviously apart from implementing some of the really popular mods, like the survivor mods, the font mods that makes the game a lot more intuitive. Just stick in multiplayer, and then that way, if you can play with your PlayStation friends, your PC friends, like you're gonna see something, right? You're gonna see an increase in the player base. John Wolf says competition is better for gamers, no kumbaya bullshit. Which is, I think, what Oshus is trying to say, that, ever since we got this Xbox Kumbaya version, the industry as a whole is going to take a turn where gamers can now be more exploited, taken advantage of, right? We're seeing prices increase from games to consoles without a care in the world. Nintendo's doing this as well. And we can get into Nintendo a little bit later on as well. But Tony, you had a response to Oshus. Please carry on.
Yeah, so the rebuttal I gave Oshus, right? He answered on the perspective of he effectively chose Microsoft going forward if, like I said, if next year they made all their games exclusive. So Oshus, wouldn't you say that's like a power play that they're sitting on, right? They have, that's an option. So that's like a margin of safety. Should they choose to use it? Now, what does Sony have on their side that could flip things? You know what I mean?
You know what Sony's only power card is right now? Is the fact that Microsoft ain't gonna do shit. That is their number one card. They understand that they've got a competitor. Exactly. Like, they can call Microsoft's bluff on any point and Microsoft is not gonna do shit. They understand that Microsoft is giving, and then whenever I say this to people always like point me to like very abstract examples, like, well, they still make hardware for PC, like very niche like Windows products, like for instance the Surface and whatever. And I'm like, no guys, like, you have to understand, like with console games, there's a significant investment there, more than in that space, because you're not just investing in hardware, you're also investing in software. So it's a significant investment with a much bigger yield, because of the fact that on a Surface you're not selling hardware, you're not getting 30% from every game that's released on that platform. That's why for the longest time console gaming has been so lucrative, is because of the fact that, like, just being a host of an Xbox platform, you're making good money. But if Microsoft is saying, well, we're trading that for Gamepass and player numbers and subscriptions, fine. But all I've always said to people is that, just remember, that's a model that's untested. Nobody knows where it ends. Like, the only company that's played out that entire thing through is Netflix. And guess what's the one thing that's kept Netflix in business and doing so well for the longest time, is the fact that they've got Netflix exclusive content. And so for Xbox to say, well, we're following the Netflix model, but we are doing away with exclusives, is the dumbest thing in the world. And I've said this millions of times. They've got enough IPs to have exclusive content to their own boxes, to sell hardware. At the same time, have the games that are popular, like your Elder Scrolls franchise, your Fallouts, have all those games appear on PlayStation and other platforms. Plain and simple. But they've chosen not to do
Tony, before you go ahead, Rachie says MGB has made, sorry, let me get this up. MGB is making a stream about Xbox games selling better on PlayStation. They have to make it look positive for their side. He's right. I don't know. Even with Clem Obscure right now and with Indiana Jones, I'm seeing data.
What's MGB? What's MGB?
Oh, it's a podcaster.
Oh, okay.
You're seeing people say things like Indiana Jones is selling better on PlayStation, and it's like, well, yeah, PlayStation is the biggest console out there from a market share perspective, so there's more users. That's just the first part. Number two, it probably has the highest form of casual users as well, so that's gonna play a role. And three, obviously Xbox has Game Pass, right? So you're gonna lose sales there. I find this kind of cannibalization take very so surface level, so stupid. I have other words to use for it, but I won't say it on this podcast. It's crazy to me. But yeah, Tony, go ahead, fire away. If you can remember what you were gonna say about Oshus at this point.
No, I'm going to end on that topic. Otherwise, we'll keep on going.
Yeah.
It's just I just think Microsoft in the long run has the more options than Sony does. But as Osha said, they're afraid to pull the trigger. But
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
just push people or companies a bit too far, and yeah, you'll get a response. But can we go on
let's move
to
on
John's
to,
question about Clay Obscure? I actually want to answer that one badly.
John's question. Which one is that?
Yeah, you had a poll up, and then he answered.
Oh yeah. We're actually going to talk about Clear Obscure now, so we'll get into it shortly. So Clear Obscure Expedition 33 is a game that I don't want to say has taken everyone by storm, because the Xbox Showcase last year did a really good job of highlighting that. And if you were to ask many people there, they would actually put that game as one of their number ones, right? Then the Developer Direct, it was the clear winner. Obviously, Doom is Doom, right? So that does a good job. But Clear Obscure clearly was getting some attention there. So when people say this game was, a sleeper, I don't believe so. Yeah, there are people who aren't really talking about it, but also because you just don't really know, is the game going to be a 9 out of 10, 10 out of 10, or whatever it is, right? If it's an 8 out of 10, it probably doesn't do as much from a sales perspective. But because it is seen as a masterpiece with a Metacritic of 92, of course, you're going to get
96, isn't it?
Plus players. No, 92. Well, maybe with Xbox, it might be 96 or PC.
Yeah, it's 96, I think, on Xbox.
On Xbox, yeah. But somebody called me out on this, saying that the way to really measure Metacritic is to look at the one with the most reviews. So
that would be the PlayStation version.
Yeah, and that's 92. So, but listen, let's talk about some of the gameplays, the aesthetics, the themes, initial impressions. Tony, does the aesthetic enhance the story for you, or are you in a situation where this game could have looked anything? It could have been darker, it could have been brighter, it could have looked like Avowed, and it still would have captured your attention. It's basically, how much does aesthetic play in the full package of a video game?
So funny enough, when I loaded up the game and I was playing it yesterday, I was like, my PC ain't shit. I was like, no, something's wrong here. So fiddling around in the settings, but then I realized it's the artwork. But you quickly get used to it. There's nothing wrong with it. It actually looks really good. This, sometimes you have this washed camera effect. It just works. The more you play, it just works. It's the style that we're going for. They want it to be slightly different in that sense, and it's good. Does it affect the story or enhance the story? No. The story in video games, I think, is just script writing, right? And pacing. How you do that is what's going to be more important. So when I first started the game, without saying any spoilers or whatever, at the very beginning, the game drops just enough to keep you wanting to know more about the story, drops some big bombshells but no explanations, and then some crazy stuff happens within the first 2 hours. And I was like, oh wow, this is just like the opening act. So I think, how many hours am I into the game? I think about 6, 7 at this point. It's just really good. The pacing is really good. Combat, we'll get into, I imagine. But story-wise, yeah, it just works. The only thing, and I mentioned this to Ty before, I still don't know why they decided to put the cutscenes capped at 30 frames, but visually I've just gotten used to that.
Normally, the reason why they would do that is because during the cutscenes, they want to show off the game's, graphical prowess, right? So they can add more detail to the game. And if it's 60 frames, then it kind of, it takes a step back. 60 frames is important when you're, playing the actual game, right? Moving around, it feels good. But when you're watching the game, you don't really need to feel good, right? You just need to look good. So that would be, I think, the common argument there. But I'll ask you another question, and I'll pass it on to Ushers as well. The gameplay, right? So before the gameplay, what kind of people would be attracted to this game? What is the audience like? Do we expect people who are into JRPGs to want to play this game? People who are into normal RPGs? People who are into action adventure games? And would you say this game is the Elden Ring of Souls-like games, right? Is it the...
get out of here.
I don't think you know
the Elden Ring.
Hold on. I don't think you guys should know what I'm asking. Is it the Mario Kart to kart games? Is it the Mario Brothers to platform games? Is it the Baldur's Gate 3 to CRPG games? And what I mean by that is that the game transcends its genre, right? So Elden Ring is a game where you can pick up Elden Ring right now, and you're a casual player, and you love Elden Ring and you don't like Souls-like games in general, or you never play them in general. So it's Clair Obscur, that game that makes non-JRPG fans and non-RPG fans who like turn-based games, who don't like turn-based games, pick this product up. What's your take?
Jesus Christ, that was a long poetic speech, man. Just ask one question.
Ushers, can you answer the question, please, and let's leave this guy.
I'm sorry. Okay, all right. Jesus, a lot to unpack there. First, audience. It's for gamers who are cheap and can afford Game Pass. Et voila. Doesn't matter what genre you want to, you just want to try it. But general RPG enthusiasts, right? People who've played like what's that game? Your favorite game, Persona, any other JRPG turn-based kind of games, right?
RPG,
even games,
Dragon,
games that are not necessarily turn-based exclusive. Like for instance, Pillars of Eternity has both options, right? So even people who've played that, and basically anybody else who really likes a story, people who are story driven and don't really care too much about combat, this game has a really good story so far. I haven't finished it obviously, but from what I've been playing so far, it's just very, very intriguing. And then your second point was your poetic point about if it's the blah 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 of the blah blah blah. I can't remember all the examples you gave. It is not like redefining or becoming like the standard for JRPG games going forward, right? Let's just think about it. It just introduced it introduced anything new. That's the funny thing. And everyone was going so crazy. I'm like, it didn't introduce anything new. This button pressing system in turn-based has been there before. They just made it like so that when you play the game, it's just you're always interacting with something. You know, it's not just press a button, let it play out. No, it's like you have to pay attention. You're now able to do. Who's drinking a can of Coke, man? That's quite loud.
What happened?
Can you mute yourself? Sorry. Yeah. So, like I was saying, the prompts, to attack, to get perfect attacks, to dodge, to jump, to parry, that's really nice. But these components have been in games before. They just do a really good job in making sure that it's a fluid transition in combat. You can't just press a button.
Well, hold on. So, do you think that this game does it have a better chance at attracting individuals who don't like turn-based games? Do you think somebody looks at this product and think, okay, I don't play turn-based games, I don't like JRPG games, but there's something about this game that's making me want to purchase it? In the same way how there's people out there who never played Monster Hunter before, and Monster Hunter World was that game that made them want to purchase it. It was Elden Ring that made them want to actually explore Souls-like games. Does this game have the potential to be that?
I don't think so. With those examples you gave, Monster Hunter was fight the monster. That was it, just go fight the monster. Then World came out, you can start exploring, climbing, grappling, all these kind of components put in there. Then the other one that you mentioned was Elden Ring, right? Dark Souls, again, isometric, just one path, go in, and that's it. Then you had Elden Ring where you can just literally go and do whatever you want. In fact, people didn't even finish the game after 30 hours because they were just distracted. So distraction in those two examples you gave was the key. In Clair Obscur, for people who don't really like turn-based games, the only difference now is you can press a button when you press another button.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it's not
you.
going to make a fundamental change to their mind. If anything else, it would be other components like, hey, everyone's raging about the story is amazing. Then they'll be like, you know what? Okay, cool. Either I'll type it onto YouTube or I'll go on Game Pass and get it. But I don't think they will sacrifice $70 just because of those components.
Okay.
Or whatever it's
I asked Rachel a question about, Club Squad is the one I'm asking you guys. And he says, well, Nintendo sold at least 3.3 million copies of Mario RPG. So there is an audience there. Now, the Mario RPG games, I do believe they do have some button prompts as well. So if you were to jump on an enemy or hit an enemy, if you press maybe A or B at the right time, it will kind of give you extra damage. So there is something there. Kenwell, welcome. How are you doing, brother?
Yo, I'm doing good.
Just to be clear, Kenwell isn't late. I actually messed up the timing. He just start 1 hour later, and I'm there like, waiting on him, thinking like, this motherfucker again. It's all on me. We talked about Starfield a little bit, but we'll get to that at the end. But let's talk about Club Obscure. And after I ask you this question, I'll pass it on to Ushers. But my question was, what kind of people do you think are going to be interested in this game? Like, what is the audience? Is it not just JRPG? Do we have action adventure fans? Do we have puzzle fans? Do we have, Western RPG fans that are going to gravitate towards this project? And would you say this game is the, in my poetic way, as Tony calls it, the Elden Ring of JRPG, or the Mario Kart to kart racing games? And what I mean by that is that, does this game have the potential to grab audiences and casual audiences who are never interested in turn-based games like this, and now they find themselves trying this product out? What are your thoughts?
So when it comes to the first question, I don't think this is gonna... I mean, I'm used to turn-based games, so I don't play a lot of them, but I know I have a lot of friends that distinctly hate these games. I feel like it's kind of just stuck in that place where, yes, turn-based, nobody's saying it has a small fan base, but I don't think this is going to have crossover appeal, in my opinion. I still find myself being annoyed that it's turn-based, but that's just me as a turn-based guy. But if I find myself annoyed, a lot of people just don't like this style of game. But this is definitely, if you're an action kind of guy, if you're a story kind of guy, this is definitely Clair Obscur hits those check marks. That's what got me into it, just the cinematics and just the presentation of this game. So I'm not going to say it has zero crossover appeal, but it's got crossover appeal with select genres of games.
Yep, no, got you, man. I want to highlight Richie's point real quick. I was just typing a response where he said the game, he sees many people purchasing the game. Sorry, that's my comment. 1 sec. He says, yes, he sees many said they didn't want to play. Sorry. This guy. So I asked him basically, do you think many people are going to purchase the game? And he said that he sees a long tail end when it comes to the sales. And I agree that I think when it comes to the holiday season, people are going to purchase this product. And when the Game Awards comes around, they will benefit full force from every single marketing beat. I think they'll have the trailers there. They'll win awards, definitely. They'll come up. If they win Game of the Year, you can see an uptick in sales. So
can I say something? Sorry, real quick. Sorry, I just want to confirm. I'm thinking about this on the same linear way. When you're talking about sales, are you talking about people buying the game full price, right, versus people playing it on Game Pass like myself, just because I wanted to play the game?
Yeah, well, I think it's a bit of both, right? Players, I think sales are important, but I think players are also somewhat important. It's a little bit more blurry with the players' equation, but it does tell a story. You just need to know how to decipher the story. That's it.
Well, then you're gonna have to look at people playing it on Game Pass, because there's gonna be people like me who would never buy this game full price, but it was interesting. It's not I play turn-based games, right? I play, for instance, Dragon Quest.
Well, hold on. How much would you pay for this product then, this game?
Full price, because I'm loving it. If you asked me this 2 days ago, I would have said no, full price. But that's different. I'm just fully absorbed into the game. But that's just because I've actually now played it, But I'm talking about people like myself who looked at it from an outside perspective, and were like, you know what? Okay, it's turn-based. I'm not really always crazy about turn-based games, but because it was available on Game Pass, that's why it got my attention. Now next year, if they do, let's just say Clear Obscure 2, right? They've now got me as a fan at that point, and if it's not on Game Pass, then I will still buy it. Maybe not day one, maybe holiday sales, perhaps.
So we're talking about the effect of Game Pass helping with the marketing beat. That's another topic as well that we'll get into. But Ushers, you know the question I'm going to ask you. What are your thoughts? Is this game something that you think might transcend the turn-based RPG formula?
Well, first, let's just, they say before you can run, you need to learn to walk. And before you can learn to walk, you need to learn how to crawl. This is the first entry for this game from 30 developers. It's not Elden Ring. It's not supposed to be Elden Ring. It's supposed to be the first Dark Souls game. And it's supposed to ignite a passionate audience of people who have always wanted this game from a developer like Square, who have for, excuse me, decades told you, no, nobody wants turn-based games. That's why we're doing all this action bullshit in our fucking games that have always been turn-based. We're doing all this fucking so-called mechanics that look Western because that's what everybody wants. And again, I keep saying to people that, okay, cool. If you're aiming for the audience that nobody can fucking pin down, that don't really, in my opinion, really exist, then keep doing all this crap. But what's happening is that the people that keep buying like your Final Fantasies and are interested in those because they think one day they'll get what they grew up with or what they came up with. They're slowly learning the fact that no, that's not what Square wants. Square wants the guys that are playing games on their cell phones. So what this game does, it says, you know what, to all those guys that grew up playing these games, this is a game for you. That's why you can have 1 million gamers overnight playing this game, because of the fact that this audience has always been there, and it's just the mainstream big ass publishers that have been telling you for the longest time that this is not an important market. Ignore it. Focus on our multiplayer bullshit games. Focus on our live services instead of us giving you proper stories. This game, within the first 10 to 15 minutes of the game, it is such a deep narrative that unless you don't have a heart or you're not paying attention, it really draws you into the game. Like, I've not felt this emotional about a game in a long time, where a game actually tugs on your feelings, and you're like, wow, I want to experience more of this. And then within the second, when you start the game and you within like, I think the second part of the game, immediately again you're torn, because they do so many things that a lot of good stories do, either in books, narratively, or in movies, great movies or great series. I mean, this is the one thing that a lot of developers like Ubisoft have not given a fuck about for decades. All they want is they just want to put more shit on top of more shit, more useless missions upon on top of everything in this game is focused to perfection. And
So
this is how games used to
then
be built in the
that's going to
PS1,
be enough to
PS2
attract.
era.
You think that's going to be enough to attract other users? So
No,
I
no,
mean,
no. It's
okay,
not. This is not for fucking people that play bullshit cell phone games. This is for people that grew up playing PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 games.
no,
All
but
these fucking
hold
guys
on,
that grew up
hold on,
playing. This
hold
is not for
on.
Minecraft players.
You're missing the
If you're a
point.
Minecraft player, this
It's
is not
not
for
for
you.
Minecraft players. Hold on. It's not for Minecraft players, right? But there's people out there who don't like turn-based games, but they like
No.
Skyrim. Hold on. There's people out there who don't like turn-based games, but they like Skyrim, like Fallout 4. There's people out there who don't like turn-based games, but they like, your Ghost of Tsushima. They like your Assassin's Creed games. So the question is, does this game, with its new turn-based mechanics, now it's not new per se, but they've
They're not new.
amplified it, right?
These are the mechanics that we had like for decades. These are not new. There's nothing in this game in terms of gameplay wise that's never been done before. Square and Xbox have done this. The way that this game plays, go play Lost Odyssey if you haven't played Lost Odyssey. It plays exactly like Lost Odyssey. There's nothing in this game that's revolutionary or new, but it's for those people that actually wanted a sequel to Lost Odyssey but never got it. That wanted a sequel to Final Fantasy, say 10, and never got it. This is why I keep saying that this is for gamers that appreciated turn-based games as they were, especially JRPGs.
Okay.
And then a lot of people say, no, but...
So to round up
Okay,
then what you're basically saying is that the people who are going to purchase these games are just turn-based, people who like turn-based games.
100%.
Someone who's played Skyrim looks at this and still thinks, nah, crap, not interested.
If you like Skyrim, this might not be for you. Because again, it's the same reason like Oblivion is not for me. Oblivion is it's the same bullshit I played in 2007 when I played that game. I thought like, fuck this shit. Like, I'm busy fucking fighting rats in a sewer. Like, come on, like this is garbage. Like, and even when I got out of the sewer, like I didn't like the game. Like, it didn't open up for me the way that it did for a lot of other players. But when I played Skyrim, I felt differently because the first freaking 15 to 20 minutes of the first hour of the game, you're fighting a dragon.
Okay, so I do have a
in.
pushback to that, but just because there's a lot to talk about, I'm gonna move on. But
so that's my thing. Is that like it's not gonna get different people, dude. It's not. This is for people like me. As I said to you, the people that are buying this game are people who like.
Right. Look at you.
They like the Final Fantasy game that Square Enix no longer makes.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody have a rebuttal to that, or do we move on to the next talking point?
Just on that, your Oblivion rant, Oblivion was released in 2006, right? Skyrim was 5 years later, so they learned from Oblivion, so it's not really a good comparison. If you want to make a comparison, then use something that was also released around 2006 to make it fair, right? I played Oblivion. I thought that game was great, right? Obviously, I don't want to start doing hindsight. Back then, the graphics and everything, if I look at it now, I'm like, oh, it was kind of shit. But no, it was fun. It was like an RPG. Do you know what it reminded me of? A bit of like RuneScape, except in first person. Kinda. But the game was good. It was good. It obviously had its bugs and everything or whatever, but it was just a really, really nice paced game where you could do anything you wanted. So imagination was the key, right? Skyrim obviously blew everybody's mind out to dragons and stuff like that. Now, if you try to implement dragons in Oblivion, you're probably going to have issues there with God knows whatever. So they're both great games. Oblivion actually changed the gaming industry. Don't forget that as well. It helped change the gaming industry.
I got a comment here from Rachel that I'm putting up on the screen. It says, neglected audiences are the best customer you can get. Infinity Nikki last year managed to get tens of millions of players because of the girly games having neglected for 20 years. And there's a strong argument there, actually. Kemal, would you agree with that
Agreed.
statement?
100% agreed.
Yeah, 100%.
So let's move on to the Clear Obscure Oblivion launch controversy, right? So these two games dropped close together back to back. Oblivion was shadow dropped just around the same time as just a few days before Clear Obscure. And the argument here was that, or the comment here was that Microsoft has botched this because they have the marketing rights for Clear Obscure, and this is going to be a hit. So why would you drop two hits back to back? It doesn't make any sense. So the question is, for Ken, well, I'll pass to you first, is did the launch of Oblivion Remaster affect Clear Obscure in any material sense? And should Microsoft have spaced these games out a bit better?
I don't think this had to do... I don't think based off of the sales that I'm seeing and the player count, I don't think Oblivion did much to impact. In my opinion, I felt Oblivion more... Yeah, it had a great launch, but I felt it could have been a little bit bigger. I don't think they owed the marketing. Did they own the marketing rights for this? But I just thought this was coming to Game Pass.
I'm not sure. I know Kepler owned Kepler's the publisher, so Kepler probably was the main push. They might not have owned the marketing, but definitely they were able to advertise Game Pass.
Yeah, no, this was Microsoft's marketed game.
Okay, Microsoft's marketing game.
Microsoft marketing game. I mean, Microsoft's not in the business of really selling games. Like they don't care that much about if this game is going to sell. They care more about, is this game going to generate subscriptions for Game Pass?
Good point.
If that's the case, like what Aushus is saying, this isn't that. it isn't necessarily that good of a game to do it with because it's turn-based and it's going to appeal to a certain genre of people. It's going to if you're going to buy this game, you were going to buy this game. So I don't think Oblivion really did anything to affect this game, it dropping in the same week. That's just the way I see it.
But then here's another point then. Do you think that Microsoft is actually looking at this as a potential win here, right? So you drop Oblivion, which is different. It's Western RPG, sandbox game. And then you drop Clair Obscur, which is story focus driven, a bit more shorter, different gameplay mechanics, turn-based. And because of that, they're thinking, we've just upped the value of Game Pass, like tenfold now, right? And they know these guys know Doom is coming out as well. And you've had Avowed there, you've had South of Midnight, and people are going to be more interested in purchasing Game Pass now because the value is stronger. We have someone on the panel, Tony, who just subscribed to Game Pass just to play this game, and he has Oblivion on the in his back burner. So do you think that was Microsoft's thinking here?
That's a good point. I would like to give them credit for that, but
no.
Like they seem like they could do something that's smart and then another thing that just doesn't make any sense. So that's the reason why I want to hold off on that, where it's like, all right, we really want to bolster the value of Game Pass, but then they just drop South of Midnight and then just go like, all right, you can just have this shit and we'll just put it out, and then it's just a fart and everyone forgets about it when that's a pretty solid game. But long-term thinking, that would be the best strategy. They're putting out these quality games. Finally, this is the best year, I would say, where they've been putting out solid, up to more than substandard games on this platform that would convince somebody to subscribe to Game Pass. So the value is definitely there, and you can look at it like that. But I just don't think Xbox is going to be... I think they're just putting out whatever they can to put out, because there's not really... It seems there's not a strategy when it comes to some of this stuff, when it comes to releasing it. Like when we got it, when we get it.
Agreed. Completely.
Before I go to Ushers, Tony, I'll pass it on to you as well. First, do you think that Oblivion Remaster, in some way, shape, or form, at least from a material perspective, affected Clair Obscur's marketing or potential sales, or even like potential Game Pass players, right? Because they're both launched on Game Pass. And the second question would be, do you think from Microsoft's perspective that this was actually a good thing because it increased the value of Game Pass for that 1 month? You might be somebody who, maybe it's considered Game Pass in January, but it's not enough. Well, February, not enough. But now in April, I should say, now you have two big games that you see Doom coming in a couple of weeks. Does that entice you to actually subscribe to the service?
Why do you always ask me like 5 questions in one go? Well, first of all hail Game Pass for this month anyways. So the release of Oblivion, did it staunch in any way, shape, or form, or a little bit from Clair Obscur? I don't think so, because before Ken even mentioned it, when you asked the question, I was already thinking the same thing. It was to promote Game Pass. Now, I know Osher says they don't have a strategy, right? And it seems that way with the evidence, but I think this was a stance for them to say, hey, look, when we created or launched the Game Pass, what you're experiencing right now is the target, is the end goal. So they're just showing you like, hey, look, even though we kind of messed up in the past or whatever, here you go, 2 top-notch games in one go. So it's kind of like them saying, keep faith in Game Pass, right? This will happen going forward. And then, sorry, what was the second part of the question? See, even you forgot. God damn it! How am I supposed to remember if the host forgets?
Yeah, I can't. It's blanking on me. I think it was something to do with
Apologize.
Oh, sorry. Do you think Microsoft planned this? Yes.
I think so. Now, if we start playing strategy, right? Oh, release this one in April, then release in May, then release the other big hitter in June. I mean, guys, don't forget, other games are being released. Yeah, you're gonna have a problem if you start spacing everything out, and then GTA goes, "Hey, we're releasing in June," and you're like, "Shit, I had this game in June." So then you start doing a fumble of like delaying, or usually they all delay. They don't push games closer, right?
So basically, you're saying that like just because there's a lot of games coming out this year, and any kind of pushback is going to just lead to games clashing with each other.
Yeah, like so. For instance, remember today we were talking about this tide. There's over. I think it was about 40 games that are still on standby for a release date this year. Like 40. That's mad. Yeah. That's just the ones on the back burner waiting for a release date.
Yeah, the ones we know about.
Yes. The ones we know about. And then you're telling Microsoft, hey, look, put this one in this one, put that one in that one. It's so much uncertainty. I think this was good. Because now they've got they've got April basically and probably May covered. It's all about them. Mm-hmm. Now, if they released Oblivion, and obviously Oblivion does well, and then they release this in the future, let's say August or something, what happens then? What do you want them to do if next month 4 big hitters are announced in August? Would you tell them, they should postpone? Don't forget, every time they postpone a game, it hurts them. It really does hurt them, right? So this was a good strategy. Game Pass, I think this was a Game Pass play, hands down.
Yeah. That makes sense. Ushers, how about you? Would you agree that Xbox number one, Oblivion remaster materially affected this Clear Obscure? Number 2, do you think this was a Game Pass play? And if it was a Game Pass play, do you think it actually worked?
Whether it affected the game or not, because it's 2 RPGs, because that's the main thing that everyone was worried about, was that because it's 2 RPGs and the one is fucking Bethesda, it's gonna bury the other one. And fortunately, there's a lot of us out there that actually still have, as much as there's people that have fond memories of Oblivion, there's a lot of us that have fond memories of all these other JRPGs that came before that we loved, that focused purely on narrative. And but in terms of like whether it did affect it, I can't tell the extent of that. I can say that from what I see is that it didn't affect it negatively, because everyone that was aware of the fact that this game was coming said exactly the same thing. Like, guys, yes, you have Oblivion, but go fucking check this game out. And everybody went and checked this game out. So I can only say from what I see in the results that it didn't affect it negatively. This game still did incredibly well. It sold over 1 million. It's got over 120 players. I think the highest was 130 concurrent players on Steam, which is great for a game like this that's made by 30 people. Fantastic. Great job. In terms of like, is there a strategy and this was something that Phil intended? No, there's no fucking plan at Xbox. They're literally just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. There's no fucking strategy there. Like, if for a strategy to be a strategy, like, I can tell you that, okay, cool, I can at least speculate what Sony is thinking based on the concurrent things that they've done, maybe in their 3 released windows. Microsoft has not done anything consistent for fucking, I think the last time Microsoft did anything consistent was probably in the 360 era. So whatever this is another thing that Microsoft happened to do, and it happened to work by chance. So no, there's no genius mind plan. Like, Microsoft is very good at planning, like, for instance, the big plays, like, well, we're gonna buy this studio because we have more IPs, will win. But when it comes to intricate things like this, no one is thinking like that under Matt Booty. Like, there's no strategic thinking there. So that's my answer.
Sorry, Oshers. Actually, I'll ask Ty at this point, and then based on the answer, I might ask Oshers. So Osher said they don't have any strategy, right? I'm just thinking, do we have the numbers for the subscriber count for Game Pass for the last, say, 3-4 years?
No, they have not released it.
It's like 30 to 35 million, right, Ken?
They have not released it.
Like an estimate, they play around with the numbers a lot.
Like, Phil, this is the thing I hate about Phil, is that, like, if you are confident in your strategies, then fucking give us the numbers in terms of how well are these ideas, these spectacular ideas of yours are doing. And they refuse as a business. They started with game console sales in the Xbox One era. Now they refuse, and they used to release, like, when Game Pass was doing well, they used to release numbers like, whoa, it's grown this much, but since like 2022, I think they've not said jack.
Tony, what's your question?
You know, I was hoping that we had the numbers, because I was going to say, if for instance the numbers were showing that year on year they're having an increase of like, say, I don't know, 12 to 20% of Game Pass subscribers, and I'll be like, that in a sense is a strategy, right? Because something's working consistently. But since we don't have the numbers, and the fact that it seems like they've stopped, they used to produce those numbers and stopped that. Okay, that's a question mark in itself.
Rachel says, I agree, Ushers. Xbox wants to buy every Pew Pew Studios on Earth.
Stop calling them Pew Pew, man.
Before we move on to the
Rachel's
next
on the
topic,
money
which is a
there.
little bit similar, I will say, one, there's value in. Actually, Ken, how do you think we should evaluate the value of like players, right? I've spoken to a few people about this, and they're obsessed with this idea of we just want sales. So tell us the players, bro. And I was telling some guys that, when these guys release the numbers, like if they don't release the actual sales, like why would that matter, right? We know the game is doing well. We know sales wise it's doing okay. And even if we don't know, we can estimate based on the studio size, how much we think the game costs to make, the hype behind the game, and how many players the game has. So for example, if Clear Obscure came out and said, hey guys, we have 500,000 players, and that includes Game Pass and sales, we already know that's not a good sign. If they say we have 1 million players, we can say that's a decent, that's good enough. How do you evaluate the success of a game when it comes to players? I know how I do. I just want to know how other people, interpret these numbers.
So, would this apply to player engagement? So how long they're playing it for?
Yeah, like, for example, like when Bethesda says, hey, we have like 1.5 million people who have played Elder Scrolls Oblivion, like, would that be seen as a success? Like, how can somebody, if they said we have 900,000 people playing Oblivion, we would all say like, well, that's a bit of a flop, like, the first 4 days for Oblivion, right? What is that number that is a success for you?
So I gotta go with sales, because although played, it can be one of those fake gags. The sales is someone committed the full. They were committed, which means they were interested. With the Game Pass, with anything that's free to play, or the barrier to entry is low, you don't get that benefit of the doubt to me, because you were at least some of those players that engaged with the game weren't fully interested in that game. So if you were to translate that into a dollar where they have to spend money on, then it's going to hit way different than of course the sales. So that's the way I measure it. I do get, for certain games, engagement does matter. So like if it's a free to play game, then of course that's going to matter more than, let's say, a skin in that free to play game. That it really doesn't matter at all. But when it comes to engagement for a normally priced game, then I don't think measuring engagement is all that important.
Okay. I'll move on to the next question, which is shadow drops in the gaming industry. Are they good or are they bad? And how can they affect the reachability of a game? So first up, we have Hi-Fi Rush. Hi-Fi Rush dropped as a shadow drop, and many people would argue that it actually did well for the game. It actually pushed it a little bit towards people's mindsets. However, some people would argue that a traditional marketing approach would be better for the game success. We've seen Oblivion Remastered just drop now as a shadow drop. Do you think a shadow drop, when there's nothing expected and everyone's quiet, do you think that leads to more players purchasing the title, or do you think the traditional approach is a better option for developers? So I guess in that sense, if Bethesda had done it the traditional way, announced Oblivion Remaster maybe 2-3 months ago, and then built up the marketing towards the game, do you think that would have yielded better results?
This is a good one.
Can I go for this one? Can I go for this one first?
Go ahead.
I. Okay, so shadow drops. No. Straight up, my answer first of all is no. And then the explanation is this: that's a gamble. It wasn't a gamble in Oblivion sense because you've known for the past decade plus they've been begging you for this remake. You've had the audience, right? So that one wasn't really a gamble. But if you're just dropping a game, obviously you might think, yeah, but our game is going to do really well. It's a maybe AAA contender or whatever it is. It's still a gamble. It's still a gamble at the end of the day. A shadow drop. Okay, get out of here. you try being try going to an investor and telling them, hey, look, we're going to spend thousands on budget or whatever for this game. Yeah, we're not going to tell anybody. We're just going to drop it in 3 days. They're going to be like, are you mad? Like, can you guarantee the return? You've not even seen any you've not gotten any feedback, right, from your marketing team or whatever. So it's risky. If it works, everyone's happy. If it doesn't work, everyone looks at you like you're an idiot, and they'll say to Ushers, he's right. They didn't have any strategic play. So to sum up, no, I think the traditional sense is more proven and results driven.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Kenwa, are you ready to fire away?
I disagree to an extent. I think people get, like, I'm going to, of course, use Hi-Fi Rush. Do you guys fully believe Hi-Fi Rush would have done better knowing all that we know? Like, Hi-Fi Rush, when it dropped, it had the boost of being a shadow drop. Then we find out that the sales aren't that impressive. Then it goes into the shadow drop narrative. To this day, Hi-Fi Rush is being talked about. Now, again, we can't really predict this, but do you guys feel that if it had a traditional marketing, it would have been talked about to this day the same way?
Before you guys answer that, Richie says, he says it's a success on PlayStation podcast. Everyone's comments are, we buy games. But in Xbox podcast, everyone is saying, I love the scene, I love the combat, love the story. That's going to tie into the question of the initial poll, which ended up at 60%, which was, should the AAA developers be ashamed? So we'll get into that shortly as well. But yeah, carry on, guys. Tony, Ushers, you guys.
Yeah, so like Hi-Fi Rush, do you guys feel like it would have done better if it had a traditional?
Ushers?
If Hi-Fi Rush was marketed by Nintendo or Sony, it would have done far better. If that was the company that was actually publishing the game. So again, it goes back to, there's a similar problem here. There's one consistent problem in this entire thing. It's called Xbox publishing. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. That's my opinion. Like, there's this strategy of like, and it's gotten worse. I used to believe that, like, when Phil first took over around 26, well, no, he took over before that, but like when he like sort of laid his strategy out around 2017, he knew what he was doing, and he had the right people at the right positions to actually get behind these games. But what Hi-Fi Rush showed me, and I look at like how Sarah Bond spoke about Hi-Fi Rush and its success, how Aaron Greenberg talked about Hi-Fi Rush and they're happy with the numbers and everything, only for these motherfuckers 6 months later to go close the studio down and say, oh well, and then not give you an excuse or an explanation, which is, to me, it made complete sense in terms of what Xbox is doing. Is that throw shit at the wall. If it doesn't work, well, too bad. And it doesn't reflect on the quality of an experience in a game that Hi-Fi.
But hold on though. So I think to Kenwell's point, if Sony had shadow dropped it, or Nintendo had shadow dropped it, I guess the main question is shadow dropping games bad?
Okay, can I answer that question?
Titles.
Very simple.
So
give me a game that that Nintendo or Sony has shadow dropped, and I'll wait because I'm just gonna hear crickets. Give me a game that any of those studios has shadow dropped.
It's a little hard to use Sony and Nintendo because they don't throw games at the wall.
Exactly.
Like that's
Precisely.
the thing. It's
I agree.
they don't put out.
Wait. Hold on a second.
Agreed.
Wait, Ushers. Metro Prime Remastered was shadow dropped, wasn't it?
Oh yeah.
And that did well, right? What was the sales? Metro Prime Shadow.
I mean, guys, come on, it's a remake.
But that was that's the same situation with Metroid Prime as with Oblivion. It's a very well-known franchise, and it's a well-known game that everybody loved already and bought. So now you're just giving it to them on another console.
Exactly. So
that to me is not the same thing as just taking a new IP and just tossing it out the window and then just like, well, good luck. And again, the IP did well. The IP did brilliantly. It was well received. It won more awards in that year for Xbox than most games have in the entire decade.
I think what Ushers is not then saying is, and I think Tony was alluding to that. If you're an existing IP like a Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, shadow drops can work. But if you're a brand new IP, shadow drops will affect sales.
It would be risky, yes. It would be.
And then my thing is, it's not even a brand new IP.
Well, do you agree with that?
Just say yes, brother. Just say yes.
Hi-Fi, because I don't think Hi-Fi Rush would have been. I don't think it would have done much better.
Agreed.
Because on PlayStation, granted, PlayStation, when it went to PlayStation, it had a dedicated trailer and a release date, and nobody showed up for Hi-Fi Rush. So the reason why I have a trouble answering this question about the shadow drop just in general is I don't think with Hi-Fi Rush as a new IP, I just don't think that game would have. I feel like the shadow drop helped the game, not sales wise, but turning it into a cult classic
from a visibility
that people
point
will
of view,
remember,
right?
Compared to if it had a standard release. Because that year, Tears of the Kingdom came out, Spider-Man 2 came out, Lies of P came out, Phantom Liberty came out. So many other games have came out that would have just drowned that out if it did have a marketing release. I think
you're forgetting one. Sorry, finish your point first.
No, I'm good. Yeah, you go. Yeah.
You're forgetting one key thing, right, about these shadow drops and marketing. The beauty about marketing your game is that you can get immediate feedback. And people might be like, oh, this looks strange, this aspect, that scene or something, and you have time to fix that, right? Now, obviously, Hi-Fi Rush didn't have an issue when they dropped, but if your game has an issue, you wouldn't know because you're not getting feedback. And in this day and age where all it takes is a few complaints and your game is derailed, even though it's good, it's just so risky. I see more benefit. Actually, do you know what? I actually cannot even agree to see one benefit of shadow dropping. I honestly fail to see one benefit compared to the disadvantages. It's a gamble. It's just playing Texas Hold'em.
I disagree. I won't get it.
So you don't think that how people talk about Hi-Fi Rush is not somewhat valuable?
Yeah,
it is.
So, if I can add my 5 cents, like, Hi-Fi Rush should have been a Steam game. It's the perfect Steam indie game that you could have sold and had millions of players behind it. If that's how you released it, that's how you marketed it. Because there's so many games that are similar to Hi-Fi Rush that do so well on Steam. And the reason I say Steam is because of the fact that, like, I can't really say it's a game that would have done better on a Nintendo platform or a Sony platform, but definitely on Steam, I can guarantee you that there's a ripe market for a Hi-Fi Rush that would have made sure that it sold tens of millions and it was aight and the franchise was okay. But again, you need people that actually understand gaming marketing and that understand the gaming industry to do this. And there's very few of them working at Microsoft. Those people just understand how to fucking make Excel and Word. And like, because that's software to them. That's how everything works in terms of software. Like, Everything else to do with gaming, they suck. Phil is the closest example of someone that understands.
One second, and I think this would get to Kenwell's point. Is I believe he's trying to say is that Hi-Fi Rush wouldn't have done anything. You could give it a traditional marketing. In fact, if you give it traditional marketing, you probably just end up wasting cash because the game was always going to flop in its current release schedule. And I would actually say I agree. I don't think Hi-Fi Rush.
And I say I disagree with you.
But
that's why I say you should have dropped it on Steam.
It did get dropped on Steam. It was on Steam, Xbox.
No, you didn't drop but you drop it on Steam. You don't make it a shadow drop for Xbox. You market it as a Bethesda game releasing on Steam. So your whole marketing is skewed towards Steam. Even if you do announce it for Xbox.
Why would Xbox market the game as Steam?
Why would Xbox? But then that's not the same question that you're asking in terms of the shadow dropping. I'm saying to you that if you had not shadow dropped this game, because what you're saying now is that like you're now asking me a subsequent question that's got nothing to do with whether or not the game would have been successful if it wasn't a shadow drop. So we're now answering a different question. So I'm saying to you that if you had released and marketed this game as a Steam game, you would have gotten much more success of it.
I mean, but I could make an argument that if you release the game as a PlayStation game and market as a PlayStation game, you get way more success as well, or even a Nintendo game.
Absolutely, and I can see logic in that.
No, but I guess the point is, so if Xbox had just released the game, let's say they like in October, they announced a trailer, and they were like, this game is coming out in January. They did a traditional marketing campaign. Do you think that saves Hi-Fi Rush?
No, saves Hi-Fi Rush in what way? Because we don't even know whether how
so
thing played out.
Are you saying that because Xbox doesn't know what they're doing and how to market their games, it's not gonna. It still wouldn't do well because it's on Xbox.
All I'm saying is this, right? And I'm not saying it's because it's on Xbox and that's why it's going to fail. I'm saying look at all these IPs that are fairly new or not as popular as previous IPs that Xbox owns and how poorly they are received if you put them on a platform like an Xbox and then you shadow drop them because of the fact that, first of all, that is already the smallest type of market that you can position the game for. A game like Hi-Fi Rush is look at where the typical how many people are playing rhythm games on Xbox Series or on PlayStation 5 currently. Look at the success of those type of games. But then you go to Steam and you look at the success of those type of games, and I'm saying to you that if they had put the sort of clout that they did behind that game being a primarily Steam game or Steam release that is gonna come to Xbox or Gamepass whenever, that game would have been much more successful and much better received. Because now what you're doing is, okay, cool, you're putting it on PC and Steam, but it's also available on Xbox Game Pass. So you're not giving people incentive on PC to go try this game out, and you've not put enough marketing in it for people to be interested in the idea of the game. So you're sort of forcing them into one direction, and this is the problem with this whole thing, is that if you force people into a direction, say, okay, cool, it's available on Game Pass, and this is where you primarily, that's where people are gonna go sample the game, and you're gonna miss out a lot of the people that
I have some rebuttals there, but we do gotta move on to a different topic. But Kenwell, do you have a response there, and we can close out this topic?
Nah, that's it. It's hard for me to really, because you're just all right. Let's say they did this, and my thing is where I just always agree with Ausius is how bad Xbox is when it comes to strategy. They don't think things through, and it just seems what were you trying to gain from this, and did you gain anything from this to now improve what's to come ahead? It's just I don't know with Xbox. What were they trying to do with Hi-Fi Rush that because they did with Hi-Fi Rush, they're either not going to do again or going to do again?
Okay.
Exactly. And to your point, just one last thing I just want to say, Kai, that game, regardless of what you say, it did better in terms of what Xbox always tries to do it won more awards. It was more acclaimed than any game that they released that year. How do you take
Xbox One?
And then they closed this, and they closed the studio a couple of months after this game had just been on run after run of just being acclaimed. It was the only game, or one of the only games, that was nominated for anything for Game of the Year in their library. And like, so it's got all these accolades, and it did well at like over 2 million player numbers. So this is not a game that just like face planted. This is a game that had a lot of recognition. And then they closed the studio down. They didn't even explain to you, as the person that is subscribing to their service or that is, buying into their brand, why they closed the studio down. It's like, oh well. And how are you supposed to have faith and confidence in this publisher?
And again, also, just like I was saying, all right, so are you guys gonna shadow drop? Yeah, you guys just did. So everyone's saying shadow drop isn't a good thing, and then yet you do it again. So does that mean
exactly
you guys know something that we don't, or what?
So I would say shadow drops can be good if done correctly. I think once you got to the situation of Hi-Fi Rush, where everyone watching a developer direct and everyone enjoying the actual developer showcase, and then them saying, yo, it's out right now, and then everybody's going out to go buy it, right? Everyone's purchasing it. I think that did boost it in some way, shape, or form. We'll never really know if, from a momentum point of view, if, a traditional marketing campaign would have helped. I don't really think so. I think the shadow drops does a really good job for Game Pass. I think it kind of makes people like, okay, there's this new game that's out. I want to check it out. I don't have sales, so I don't have reviews to go off. Okay, well, let me go on Game Pass and check it out there because I don't want to spend $60 on this title, right? I don't. For example, if Club Scare was shadow dropped, we saw the developer direct or whatever, and it was shadow. Like I said, it was the developer direct, and they shadow dropped it. I do believe they would have done well enough. But I do think there's a very good argument here that when it's a new IP, maybe shadow drops might not be the best. I just don't know if Hi-Fi Rush is the best example to use for that question.
But let me ask you guys a question. Since I've been quiet for a while, everyone made good points, right? I listed a number of games. You tell me from all three of you.
Just a quick one. Richie says Tango didn't need saving. Game Pass needed a saving after a year of disappointment. Tango saved Game Pass but died in the process. So I think he's saying Hi-Fi Rush was a sacrificial lamb to keep Game Pass afloat.
There's a lot of truth to that. Because again, we don't know what the fuck Phil and whatever the chick's name are doing. Like, their strategy makes no sense because this is not something that's been done before successfully. Whereas if you look at you study like a Nintendo or Sony strategy, you know where that's coming from and you know where they're going with it, and you know what the tangible results are. You can almost calculate. There's a mathematics there. We don't know what the fuck Phil's doing, bro.
Okay, 10 was a question.
No.
I was going to list a couple of games, and I wanted to see from all three of you if you would shadow drop it or not. I'll list one, and then you just tell me yes or no. Okay. The new GTA.
No.
Okay.
Impossible.
Impossible. Elden Ring.
No.
Okay.
Unlikely.
Unlikely. Okay, let's see. Let's try and die it down. Oh, Black Myth Wukong.
No.
That's a good one. But okay, you see, the difficult thing with Black Myth Wukong is that after the initial reveal, or after you've done all the different reveals, and then it's supposed to come out this year and you just shadow drop it.
Yeah, so you see, all the games I've mentioned, right, are all high budget. And the reason you kind of struggle with Black Myth Wukong is because the marketing is what really, really got that one out there.
100%. It's all those videos we saw beforehand that got us into it because we didn't know. But all those videos convinced us. They're what we saw. Yeah.
And then another point that Ty made was that he said, shadow dropping is great for the subscribers, right, of Game Pass. Is that what he said? Like a nice, here's a nice surprise. True, but you're also targeting people who are not on Game Pass.
Yeah.
And a lot of us nowadays, gamers, we really rely on reviews and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And obviously, IGN and all these other people that review the game beforehand. That's how a lot of people decide on whether they're going to buy a game or not.
I'll say this, because of the fact that it's probably a Sony, and then Microsoft is on record of saying something about this. Because it was a Sony exclusive, no. Shadow dropping doesn't work. You need to market it and then sell it as on your console. So no. If it was on Xbox, maybe, but it never arrived on Xbox and it probably won't. But yeah, no, not on PlayStation.
Okay.
I can only think of two games that have been shadow dropped that were massive in terms of like the results.
4 hours on this podcast. Let's talk about Game Pass. And the question that I think Ken Wall sensed that I thought was good was, should developers go day one on Game Pass, and why do it? So we can consider the financial trade-offs. For a AAA game, is Game Pass a viable option? Ken, I'll go to you first.
For a AAA game, no. Did you put too much money in just to get people to just backdoor your game? Nah.
Well, okay, I think there's actually like two ways to look into that. A AAA game from a company like Capcom, right, going into Game Pass, Capcom Game Pass, so that's a different equation. But for Microsoft, who maybe has an ambition to grow Game Pass, and whether it's grown or not, that's a different story. But do you think it makes sense for them to put AAA games in Game Pass as Microsoft? And do you think it makes sense for Capcom to consider putting AAA games in Game Pass as a third-party publisher?
I don't think it's a good idea for Xbox, because you set a bad precedent. In the beginning, when Game Pass was coming out, that was one of their strategies. They were trying to buy these games. They would put in some of the development costs for these games, and then they would come on Game Pass. Now, I don't see that much at all. So I think that's just a bad precedent that you set for your consumers, because then it's just going to backfire. So I don't agree with putting AAA games unless it's from your first party studios. That's the only time I agree with putting AAA games on Game Pass.
Okay. Ushers, how about you? Is the Game Pass day one AAA blockbuster game, is that a sustainable approach?
No, man, and as the Chad, Strauss Zelnick said, it's a bullshit model. It's not a model that can work if there's a lot of money going into your games. Unless, to him, it makes sense to put GTA 5 because it's been out for almost 10 years now on Game Pass. But putting games out on Game Pass day one is the worst strategy that Microsoft has ever come up with. And to me, they can never justify how they're making money off that shit there, because it's more of a miss than it is a hit in most of the instances. And this is why now I think it further justifies them having to put their games on other platforms so they can make money, because how broke they are. Sony, the only other platform that they consider putting games on is PC. Regardless of how much money they lose, they'll never think about putting their first-party exclusive games on Sony or Nintendo, on Microsoft or Nintendo, because it's still their primary competitor, and they understand that. So no, there's no value in all this. All these strategies that they've put into place, to me, they cannot tangibly on paper show me what the benefit of them have been. This is Microsoft.
Tony, how about you? Do you agree with? Ken Wall and Nosh kind of more or less have the same views on Game Pass day one AAA blockbuster games. Are you of the same opinion that putting big games, or even a game like Club Obscura, for example, like that isn't something that really should be happening for a service like this, from a financial perspective?
Are you guys mad? Shh! Don't tell them. Are you mad? We're gamers first. It's amazing. It's goddamn amazing. It needs to happen more. Triple A, double A, single B. I don't care. Put it all on Game Pass. Obviously, yeah, financially, it's not a great strategy. Because I can't think of some long-term game that they're playing with that, right? Maybe there is. I don't know. But I guess the only benefit I can think of is if you put a AAA game on Game Pass day one. Actually, so let me just confirm one thing. Kenwell, you said unless it's your own IP, right? You'll be okay with it on day one?
Yeah, for Xbox.
Right.
Yeah, if it's Xbox. But like, it's still financially, it's not a good move. But for Xbox, because they can't rely on their console, this was their pivot. Yes, I'll allow it.
Okay. Yeah, it's. Do you know what they can do? I don't know if this might work, but I just thought about it. What if you release the game day one, and those people who do a pre-order for day one would get a slight discount? Then to come out on Game Pass, maybe I don't know, a year later. So you might actually get increased sales that way because people are like, if I get it day one instead of waiting for it on Game Pass, I'll for a year I'll get it discounted. I don't know. Let's just say $10, $8 or something like that. Do you think that might work?
Before you answer that, Richie says, I say yes, but Microsoft need to give a big fat check, but do it straight away. Not like 2022, where Game Pass left us dry for 9 months in both the first party and third party departments. Yeah, he's saying like, you can do this, but you just need to be consistent with it. No droughts and in the in between. I would agree there as well. To your point, the Game Pass, I think Game Pass is good, is viable, to be honest. I think, on paper, it might, you guys might think it looks bad. I don't think so. I think it looks bad when you don't get in console sales. So if Xbox was selling consoles, if, Game Pass was on Steam, I think we would see an uptick in Game Pass numbers. But right now, maybe not as much. But yeah, I think, I'm not going to debate with you guys on that talking point. I think it's, it's kind of left. We don't know the details, but I would say it's a viable strategy as long as you're putting in numbers, which we don't know if they're doing it. I do have another question though. In terms of player behavior, with a game like, let's say, Oblivion coming through and Clear Expedition, do you think that Game Pass creates a situation where people are choosing to like sample games as opposed to actually playing games, right? So if you purchase a game, you're more likely to, at least the argument says, you're more likely to actually try to finish that game. Whereas if you have it on Game Pass, well, you just, download it, check it out for an hour or two, and then you move on to the next game. Kenwell, I'll go to you first. Do you think there's a negative Game Pass effect that leads to us sampling games as opposed to playing games?
So this is going off of me not knowing any data, but when it comes to Game Pass, I think when most people come on to Game Pass, they have an idea of what they want to play. I don't think they're using it as, oh, I have nothing to play. Let me go on and see if I find something, download it, wait for the whole download to finish, then end up they don't like it, they play it, end up not liking it, and then they uninstall and then to do the same thing. I believe most people, when they go on Game Pass, they have an idea of what game they're going to play. They know what game they're going to play. I don't believe that Game Pass is changing. I remember Jaffe was saying this. His optimism about Game Pass is it would help game design because people, when they go on the Game Pass, the game has to hook them right away. But I don't think people are using Game Pass to that capacity. I think they go on Game Pass, like what we did this week. Oh, Claire Obscure is going on Game Pass. All right, I'm going on Game Pass, downloading Claire Obscure. It's you're already committed to what you're going to do when it comes to Game Pass. Yes, are there players that they hop on their Xbox or they go on PC where it's like, I'm looking for a game to play, and they try it out and then they move on to the next? Absolutely. But I think the majority of people, when they go on the Game Pass, is going straight for a game that they already have context on.
All right. And Ushers, do you have any take?
So this is my last take before I bounce. Unfortunately. So my thing is like I agree. I completely agree that like again like we don't know the impact or the effects of Game Pass besides what Phil tells us whenever he says like everything is fine. You know, like when he gives these fucking speeches about like how everything is going great for Xbox or he's apologizing for bullshit. Like we don't have metrics, we don't have numbers to say this is a successful model and it's actually benefiting developers and gamers. Everything is anecdotal. Some people tell you it's great, some people tell you it's not great. So there's no real like numbers that we have that can actually back up anything we say. So the only thing we end up having is just opinions on Game Pass and whether or not it's working to get like the name of a game out there or get players out like interested in a game that they wouldn't necessarily be interested in. But the one thing that's very clear to me, and this should be the indicator that tells you everything, the fact that games that are being released on Game Pass like Expedition 33 are actually selling very well to the point that you could argue that they have more players on Steam than they do on free Game Pass tells you everything you need to know about the confidence people have in Microsoft and buying games from Microsoft. And for the fact that Microsoft does not understand this, to me, if the market that you're pivoting to is a market where people do not believe in you to the point that they can get free games, but they prefer to buy them on a competing service, that should tell you everything that you need to know about how crappy your brand is. Like, it's one thing to fail against Sony, who's actively trying to stop you from succeeding, and you guys are selling hardware against each other. There's no hardware here. You just have an app that people just don't want to use. They would rather go buy the game on Steam. And that's where we can measure players, mind you. And we don't even know what the freaking hell is happening on your service. If your service is so good, you should be confident enough to say, look, day one, we had 50,000 Game Pass players on Expedition 33. But we don't have your numbers. Whose numbers do we have? We have Steam's numbers. Because they're transparent with their customer, because their business model makes sense. Whereas Microsoft, there is no business model to speak of. And that's my thing, is that you're looking at a company and we keep trying to measure their success and whether or not these things are successful. We don't know what they're measuring. We just know what they're paying people and the fact that they have people that are willing to be on their service. But we don't know whether it's working or not.
Okay. You said you had to bounce, but I do have one last question. This was the question that I put up on the poll, which was, should the AAA industry be ashamed of themselves because a game like Claire Obscure Expedition 33 with 40 developers, some decent financial backing, but still 40 developers, a double A game, maybe moving towards the AAA section, still AA, was able to release a game that's a Metacritic on 92 at this quality, and then you have teams like Ubisoft with 300 developers, Sony at 300 developers, spending over 300 million on these AAA games. Should they be ashamed of themselves and maybe rethink that, hey, maybe we've done this all wrong, maybe we need to switch things up? Or is it a case of, no, this game is good, it's great, but we still need these 300 teams to make big games like Cyberpunk 2077 and The Witcher 4, etc., etc. So in essence, no one should be ashamed. It is what it is. Before
my answer to this. We've had these discussions.
Your answer's wrong, but you can tell everyone else your wrong answer again.
I will tell everybody my wrong answer. Like, absolutely. Well, like, I don't think, like, I think shame is almost like there's no point in shame if you're a corporation or you're a company. It's just learn from the experience. And what I've been saying to you over and over, Ty, I don't know how many times we spoke, is that you don't need a game that costs $300 million, bro. I don't care how good your game is. It doesn't need to cost $300 million. Which means that you don't need to hire 300 to 1,000 people to make one game, unless you are Rockstar and you're making a game that only releases every decade. That's an experience that's for once in a lifetime type of thing. Like, Ubisoft does not need an Assassin's Creed game that has 300 developers or 300 to 500, because I think 300 is the entry level. I think like one freaking game from Ubisoft has more than 600 developers working on it. So no, and these guys come from Ubisoft. And the one thing that we've always said about Ubisoft is that their games have no soul. They lack story, and we've always said they don't have the right talent. Clearly, the talent is there, but they're just not getting airtime. And this is the problem with these big teams: is that it's only the people who have always had the same voices and the ones that are ... who have the say will always determine the direction of these games. So it's a good thing to me that a lot of these studios are falling apart and a lot of people are finding their own voices and they're finding finance. If you're a gaming financier, look at teams like this and funding teams like this and ignore the fucking Ubisofts. And if I was an investor in gaming, I would stop putting money behind EA, Ubisoft, and all these big companies and start looking at the talent that comes from those companies that can produce something like this that's going to cost me a fraction of the money and I'm going to make 10 times the profit. Versus with an Ubisoft where you have to now, regardless how successful your game is, it can still be a failure because of how many fucking studios you had to rope in to fix your game last minute because it was sucking.
All right, fair enough. Thank you for that.
But guys, thanks for having me. Like, sorry, Ty. Like, I'm gonna bounce, né? But it's always a pleasure, and thanks for having me on, Ty.
It is a man's pleasure having you on.
I was good to see you again, Oshus, man.
Bro, always great talking to you, man.
Same here, gents.
Ciao.
Take care, bro.
Cheers. And stop being such a corporate shield, you asshole.
Corporate Avenger.
I'll go to you next, man. What's your take on that? Do you think that the AAA industry should be ashamed, or it's a lot more complicated than that?
It's a bit, I think, what's going on, and I know I was looking at a post from this one guy. He's like a senior artist, and he was breaking it down. I think they should be ashamed, these game developing companies in this regard. Is at the end of the day, this is work. Like we they are in a different industry, but we all work. All three of us work. We know when there's a system in our workplace that just is completely inefficient, that they're just making us do. And I think that's a lot of what's going on in the industry. It's what I saw was it's a famous chair example. So let's say an artist wants to add a chair, then they have to go talk to the 3D modeling people. Then the 3D modeling people have to talk to the physics people because it's like, does the chair have physics? And then they have to change the mesh for it. So it has to go through all these systems instead of with this team. Whoever had the idea of putting the chair in the game, they just had to get up from their seat and go talk to the artist. But again, I don't know if they clearly, that is what's going on to a degree. There is inefficiencies in the system of AAA games that they have not figured out, because every single time they're building the train tracks while the train is going every single time. There's only been few developers in the AAA genre that can make these kinds of games under a stringent budget. I don't know what is going on with why Sony games always are exceeding so much in price. Like the Spider-Man, like obviously when it comes to workers, their salaries is increasing, but it's like, why? There's got to be something that can improve, that you guys can improve upon, that doesn't suffer the quality of the game. Because y'all have been doing this for a really long time. I know there's industry veterans that are in their 40s, 50s, 60s that have seen things done in a certain way where it's like, yeah, this is possible. We can do it that way where we can save time and money. But I refuse to believe that. So yeah, I do think this game puts to shame a lot of the AAA games that are coming out, because this doesn't make sense. Like, I'm playing Clair Obscur, I'm like, the backgrounds are all, this is all AAA level. And I've been noticing this from a lot of AA games, where a lot of this stuff is on the level of AAA. Yeah, there's a little bit of jank, but the AAA games, we're getting them in 5 to 8 years, and these games are coming out a lot sooner, and the polish is there. So yeah, they got to figure something out with what's going on in the background and work a little bit more efficiently.
Okay.
Which AI will probably help.
Yeah, I think AI is going to be a big feature going forward. But Tony, how about you? Do you think as well that I mean, you've been playing with Clear Obscure. Excuse me, it's a AA game. Nothing too crazy. Didn't cost the same as Cyberpunk. Didn't cost the same as Baldur's Gate 3. However, it's probably up there in terms of quality. Do you think this is a sign or a message to the AAA industry that you guys need to step up and y'all should be ashamed of yourselves?
Let's stop shaming companies a bit too much. Let's take Clear Obscure. It did well in every category you can think of, right? Lesser scale with lesser resources. But let's not forget they didn't have any political pressure, right? They could do things at their own pace. And as Ken Wall said, like, you know, when you want to make one change for AAA, kind of goes through multiple departments and stuff like that. I'm currently learning how to create, to code games on Unreal Engine and create stuff, right? I can see like when you've built something and you want to add one component, there's so many things down the line you have to check. Now, obviously, big games, multiple departments working on stuff like that. You can't really say, oh, Clear Obscure puts them to shame, because this could be a one-hit wonder. If they did this for the second time, then I would be like, yes, hands down, they've proven themselves. What this has done is put them on the market. Now let's see what they do next, right? And then at that point, I would be the first person to raise my hand if they succeed again and be like, yep, now they've put them to shame. So we've seen a lot of one-hit wonders, obviously, in the gaming industry, and I'm hoping this isn't one of them. But I have to also still say that AAA games and developers that mess up with a lot of things these days, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. You've got the budget, you've got the experience. The gaming industry has been around for how long? Like, it's crazy. So they need to take ownership and actually start. You know, they always say when something messes up, like, oh, we're going to try and fix it, we'll release a patch here and there. It shouldn't have to get that consistent with every game you release. You know, it just shows that you don't really care too much. But I also recognize they have pressure from the higher up end of things as well. So I wouldn't say Clear Obscure puts them to shame. It definitely puts them on their toes. But if they release a second game or a second installment to this one and it succeeds, then I can say they put them to shame.
Okay, that's fine. Listen, guys, thanks for coming through. Kenwell, I want to apologize again because, you know, we could have had more topics to cover it up, but
man, be on time.
Completely botched the whole thing. So, you know, but listen, there'll be more topics to talk about next week, so that's what we'll do. And maybe, you know, we would have played Clear Obscure a bit better. We'll go further in it so we can give it a better evaluation. But listen, Tony, Ushers, Ken Wall, and Reishi in the comments. Guys, thanks for coming through, and I'll see you guys next week.
Been a pleasure.